Morning everyone, today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2017, last day of January. My name is Robin, I am RsIslandCrafts, and welcome to my podcast. This is a crafting podcast coming to you from Southwest Florida. It's been a little cold down here for us. It started this morning at about 39 degrees Fahrenheit, and they say it's probably going to hit about 70 today. It's not very windy out there, so as long as you're in the sun, it's still nice and warm. Alright, let's see what we've been up to the last couple weeks. We as in me, because you know, it's all about me here. Alright, let's start with some cross stitch. I got some new glasses. See? Fancy, fancy. Now I can see again to work on my cross stitch. And what I decided to pull out was the Oriental Butterfly from the Dimensions kit. This is, came as a kit. And it comes on a printed 14 count beige Aida. It has these types of symbols are already printed on the fabric and some of this coloring and stuff. But all of this is cross stitched and these characters are. See what I say. It's Aida 14 by 14, 14 count. It's a lot of 14s. Anyway, before when I was working on it, I had all the butterfly done and most of this. What I ended up finishing off is this section here. Still needs a little work. I'm waiting to put on. There's medallions that hang from there. Let's see. You've got some embellishments, thread embellishments, and this is a medallion. So I'm going to hold off on those till the end. Don't need to get hooked up in anything. So, but anyway, I did this section here. And then I went ahead, and I moved down to the bottom. I worked a little here and I went right to this whole design here. These are just where I've ended off my threads, and as I cross stitch over them, I'll snip them off so you won't see them. So that's it on the cross stitch so far because, like I said, I just got my glasses about a week or so ago and this is as far as I've gotten. All right. Next thing I worked on, dun, da, 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 finished Robbie's socks. Yay! Size 14 and size 1 needles. I believe he's 76 stitches. Forever and ever and ever. Both of them are off. Of course, the ends are not woven in yet. I will do those before I give them to him. He likes to wear them with his slides, and he needs a new pair of slides, so he hasn't been wearing his socks anyway, so no rush. And since those were off, that allowed me to cast on a pair for myself. I won a skein of hand-dyed yarn from the Two Tangle Skeins podcast, and what it was... It's from the Wool Barn. It is smooth sock, one-of-a-kind strawberries and cream, superwash 4-ply, fingering weights, 75 superwash merino, 25 nylon, 100 grams. But what she also included was for toes, heels, and cuff. It's a really nice, rich color. And what I decided, it was mostly the white yarn that was speckled with red. And I didn't really like all that white. So I went ahead and I over-dyed it with the Rit dye in the aquamarine colorway. And this is what it looks like when you put it in the cake. And I'm doing my socks are a 56 stitch sock on size 1 Chow Goose magic loop. I did my little toe in that burgundy. And you can see the speckles are still popping through, and I left half the skein white and half of it I dyed, so it gave these simple little one-line stripes is what it ended up being. Now also, as you can see, I have switched stitch markers. I was using, my son works at KFC, so they have these little macaroni and cheese containers, which are just perfect to throw things on the floor with. These little stitch markers are what I was using on it. As you can see, they're about this big. They tend to stretch the stitch a lot, and I don't like that. So I switched over to my other KFC container. This one I don't want to spill. These, cats will eat them if I spill them. These are these little thin bulb ones. They still open, but they don't stretch the stitch when you're using sock weight yarn in comparison. There's a big difference in size. So, still mark my stitches, my rounds every 10. But with these, it's nice and thin, doesn't stretch anything out, and I don't have to worry about going back, blocking that out, because I tend not to block my socks. And right now, I've only started just a one sock. I didn't feel like starting a second one yet, so I have my yarn all separated. Just one sock so far. My size sock goes pretty quick. I did that just sitting at a doctor's office one day. So there's that one. Let me close these up so I don't spill them everywhere. Try not to shake you guys this week. And the other thing, I did put a little bit of work on my shawl. The Duchess of Devonshire from KF Jones. Oh, my sock, I decided to do just a little bit of a rib stitch on it. If anyone's familiar with the Bankhead hat, that's the stitch count I'm using. See all these little gullies here? That's just a purl stitch. So I did a knit 4, purl 1. The Bankhead hat is a free pattern. One of Dan Jones's previous favorite ones. I think he's onto something new now. But this, with 56 stitches, it's a 5 stitch count, so I just have one extra knit stitch at the end. That doesn't bother me at all. No one's going to see it, and if anyone gets that close to your feet, then, you know, they're weird. So that's what that is. Now, my Duchess of Devonshire is done with the wool-like yarn from Michaels, their brand. Only managed to get one section done. I've really been having fun working with the sewing machine, so I haven't done as much knitting. And when I do, I was working on the socks. But I really like how these two colors are coming out. So that's it on that. Chow Goose. Drawstring bag. I tend to use the same project bags over and over again, just convenience and comfort. So that's all I did in the knitting section. Let's see what I have been sewing. Let's move some stuff out of the way here. Oh no, look. So the other project that I have in the knitting section is I pulled the blanket out for a little bit. Sometimes you just want to do a little brain dead stitching on some big needles, and you don't want to have to worry about them little tiny ones and stitches dropping. So I brought out my big ass blanket, and I managed to put a whole 2 rows on it. Woo! Like I said before, working on these big stitches, these big needles with this really, really thick yarn, it's a little bit hard on the hand, so you tend not to do it too often. And that's going to be a bit of a long-term project, because I'm just going to keep knitting on it until the big-ass ball is gone. Okay. Now that finishes that off. Let's get into a little bit of the quilting. I did manage to finish a few projects. I finished my Hexie Snowmen. They're little wall hangings. I decided to go with a Believe. This is an applique. It's got a fusible on the back. You can just see the little red stitching all around just to hold it down. I used my free motion foot and I just did like a cursive stitch. And I gave him a scarf to match. Now this end of the scarf is just hanging free, and if it ever gets washed, this will fray a little, but it'll be fine because I left a fusible on the back of this, so it won't just shred and disappear. I added some snowflakes, sewing around those with white, same thing with the Hexies, And when I sewed those on, they went all the way through all 3 layers of the top, the batting, and the back. So they're constituting the stitching lines. And this is the fabric I chose for the back. I don't think... I told you lies. Shh, don't tell anyone. What I did is I just used the top and the batting, and I stitched through and appliqued on the Believe and the snowman, the snowflakes, and the scarf. Then I added the backing, and what I did is they're just held together. I just stitched around them on the top, did a little 1/8 of an inch stitch, flipped it inside out, you know, stitched around it. That's about it. This is a no binding method because I didn't want to have to add any extra binding. I don't have any more of this blue fabric, and I didn't want to have to deal with binding it anyways. This is just going to be a little wall hanging. It doesn't need too much. I might go back and add some snowflake buttons or do some embroidery or some hand quilting. I don't know. But there's Believe, and that's Heximan 1. Heximan 2 is the red version, and his word was joy. Same thing, I took the front and the batting, appliqued the word, the snowflakes, the snowman. He's got his little scarf too. Stitched in the ditch all along here. What you do is you lay the right side of the backing to the right side of the quilt, stitch all the way around except for a 3 to 5 inch opening. Flip it inside out, right side out, iron it. And then just stitch around the edges to close it up. A lot of people call it the pillowcase method. Makes it nice and easy. It's a very lightweight wall hanging, so it should hang nicely. And there's that one. That was my last of my finishes for the UFOs that I needed to do for the online quilt group. That gave me, this was project number 4 off of a list of 12. And then I'd also finished my Christmas swap blocks quilt. And that was number 36, I believe. So there's that. The other quilting I worked on is I quilted the Groom's quilt. I don't think I had this quilted last time we spoke. I just meandered all over in a blue, using blue thread. Just had fun, round and round and round. You can see it on the back in this section. I don't mind crossing over stitches because I know at one point or another I'm going to accidentally do it, so you may as well just incorporate it right into the quilting. It's going to happen. Quilts like this, it's really good to practice your loops and stuff, so if you're going to get to a big project that has... This is a snuggle quilt. It's meant to get used and used up, and then when it dies in, 10 years, you make another one. But if you're going to make a nice one for hanging on the wall or for a show or a really big wedding quilt or something, these are good to practice your quilting stitches on. So that big old quilt's done. I will be starting today on the bride's quilt. I figured out a layout for it, so I just got to cut the fabric for it and do that. Along with the quilting is I picked up a new tool. These are fancy dancy rotary blades for the fancy dancy rotary cutters. Quilting is very difficult without these. I keep 2 45 millimeters. As you see, I write paper on one, and this is the one I use for fabric only. It's like keeping fabric scissors. You only use them for fabric, it stays sharp. This one you cut batting and paper and ribbons and whatever, and if it dulls, it doesn't matter. When I take this one, the fabric one gets dull. I take this one and I switch it to the paper one. And when the paper one gets dull, I put it in a safety container and throw it away because you can still cut your hand on it very easily. And I put a new one in here. I bought 10, so I should be in good shape for a long time. Now, the only other thing I worked on in the quilting, where's my box? I worked on the Pat Sloan Winter Solstice quilt along. I'm keeping my blocks in one of these scrapbooking containers from Michaels. Wait till they have a sale or use a 50% off coupon, and they're only like $5. So I got all caught up. I'm pretty sure you've seen these. The one that I had to fix because I had a block backwards. The one I made because it needed to be bigger. I think I've remembered how to use the 1/4 inch mark on my sewing machine, and my blocks are all coming out at 12.5 inches unfinished. We did a 1/4 log cabin. I used up some flower fabric. It was supposed to be like a dark light, dark light, dark light, whatever. It's just scrappy to me, so it is what it is. Whatever I feel like grabbing and whatever looks good together, I go ahead for. And then we had this, I think he did, Pat Sloan was calling it like courtyard or something, because it looks like when you lay the bricks and they alternate. More scraps. For this one I just took charm squares, 5-inch charm squares, cut them in half. So you'll see the duplicates within the square. Fine with that. With me, anything goes. Then there was an applique block. You were supposed to have a basket in the center. I made the block. I was waiting on printer ink to put the basket in, but I wasn't sure. I think I might want to have a bird. I think a nice little bird in the center might look good instead of a basket. I love hand applique, so a lot of people are skipping it because they don't want to do the hand applique, but that doesn't bother me. And then this is the final one. I had a hard time lining things up, so if you notice, this one's not quite lined up straight all the way across. Nope, you notice this one's not quite straight lined up all the way across. But once you put it in with your other blocks and start quilting it, it won't be noticeable. They all blend in. More of that fun pear fabric. This one in an orange. I like that one. And now we're all caught up on that until tomorrow when the next block comes out. What I'm doing for that quilt along is I have another one of those scrapbooking boxes. And this is just full of a bunch of fabrics I purchased from Connecting Threads. There is 1/4 yard fabric in there and a whole bunch of 5-inch squares, and I'm just randomly picking from here. So everything is going to basically go together. It has a similar hue and tone to the colors. So that's what I'll be using for that quilt along. Makes it simple. It keeps you contained. If you have all your fabric to choose from, sometimes it's hard to narrow it down. It's easier if you only have 10 or 20 fabrics than if you have 100, as you can imagine. Also did a little work on my stars, my Samoan stars. I had to start bordering some more in black before I can put them onto the quilt. So I went ahead and did these. I have been restitching the centers because one of the tutorials I was reading years ago, they're like, you don't have to have that many stitches. If you just put like 10 or 12 stitches, it'll hold your fabric together. It falls apart. If you pull it, the threads separate. So I probably put 20-25 stitches in each. I like to really, I stitch it down nice. I just went right over the previous ones. When you look in the center, you can see the gray threads before. I tried cutting them out, but it's just a pain in the butt. So once again, I will probably, really don't know how I'm going to quilt this yet. I might even hand quilt it just to keep it a by hand quilt from start to finish. I think every quilter tends to have one of those at some point in their career. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like that. The quilting should help it disappear. Plus, it's going to be on my bed, and it's not going to matter. And I did start another one. I just need to finish tacking this down and start this one. I did stop for a little while because I'd switched threads. I tried the Aurifil, and as I mentioned, that one kept breaking as you're pulling it through the fabric constantly because this fabric is actually painted on. So you're not only just going through the cotton fabric, you're also having to go through this paint, so it tends to fray the thread. And then I tried the black from Connecting Threads because that's what I had. And it's a pretty sturdy one, and it doesn't put too much lint in my machine. That didn't work very well either, and I was afraid, once again, I've already sewn most of these together in gray. If I have to go through it again with black and then it still falls apart, it's really gonna me off there. So I switched to a Coats. It's a Coats Cotton Hand Quilting 20 weight in it's supposed to be black, but it kind of has a charcoaly gray look to me. I don't know. Does it say? No. Amazon told me it was black. Whatever. It works. Black or gray will work for sewing up this quilt because it's a neutral. This is a, it's a thicker thread. Difference between 20 weight and I believe these are 40 weight. So I would imagine that means it's twice as thick. As you can see, this one over here is the regular, and this is the hand quilting. Now the hand quilting cotton has thread has a waxy type finish on it that makes it so when you're hand quilting, you know you're going to be pulling it through the quilt over and over and over again. So this is a sturdier thread that's meant for that, and it comes in a variety of colors. So I think I'm going to start stocking up on these because this hand quilting thread, I've heard, is great for doing applique also. Once again, we have a visitor down here. This one's Miss Mocha. See? Kitty kitty. She's going to be shaking the camera. Sorry. Come on, Miss Mocha. Whenever there's a quilt around, she has to lay on it. She helped me quilt the Groom quilt. If you look at my Instagram, you'll see a picture of her. Okay, so what are we going to be working on next? The Quilting Around the World group, while doing the UFO challenge for the year, they will be posting the February UFO list on, that'll be coming up tomorrow. It's a coffee kind of day. And they'll pick 2 numbers and we'll see. But I think one of them, for my bonus one, I don't remember what number this horse quilt is, but I'll be going ahead and quilting this. This is a, it's more like a baby size. The fabrics were given to me from a neighbor. She was cut all the squares out. She was going to make a quilt, and then she decided she didn't like quilting anymore, so she stopped. So she gave this all to me. So I went ahead and put it together. I've got the backing fabric and everything ready for it. I've got batting and all that, so I'll probably just go ahead and get that quilted. And I never put the binding on that aqua and red quilt I showed you last time. So that's going to need to have, it's over there. That's going to need to have the binding put on it, so that can be a finish. This will be a finish. I'll put the binding on the Groom quilt. And then the 2 that the quilting group gives us for the numbers. And then I think maybe next time if I get some quilting playtime in, I'll show you what scrappy projects I've been working on. The only other thing I wanted to show you is at the dollar store, I always keep my eye out for different containers. And I found these. Bought 2 of them. $1 each. These are the organizing cases. I think they were meant to put like paper clips, erasers, I don't know what else, thumbtacks. It says great for organizing office and craft supplies. I have all these nice little containers. I'm thinking about organizing some buttons in them so I can separate them by colors. Just the simple round buttons. Because I want to start adding buttons to wall hangings and embroidery projects. And it'd be nice to have them all separated. Plus, that's a good rainy day project when I have a headache or something and I don't feel like doing anything. I can just sort buttons. That's it for me this month. What have you guys been working on? Why don't you go ahead and post down below in a comment and let me know what's going on in your crafting room. And that's it here, and I will see you on the 15th. Bye.